Is it really that boring to talk about NephillimFree? I think so, because he's kind of boring. There's no one in here but me, guys. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. If somebody doesn't join soon, I'm going to have to actually end it, because I really got nothing to say other than that was about as much fun as watching paint dry. I mean, Shannon Q did an excellent job of keeping him on the hook, but he's so demonstrably wrong on so many things. No one? Bueller? Fry? Anyone? Somebody might be coming in here. I don't know. Steve. Steve reshared it after I already shared it. That's all he did. Don't really have much to talk about. That's the first time I actually sat and watched an entire NephillimFree hangout. Like, I'd caught snippets of him off of Doc Savage's videos and so on and so forth, and it's just like, anybody in the chat wanna join Spooky, the Geek Room? Anybody? So I have somebody at least to talk to until somebody who knows more about Nephi could join. No? No? I feel lonely and dejected. Yeah, Doc Savage does earn his name. He's brutal. Hey, I have a Facebook ding. Let's see what happened. I should have got, yes, Steve, that was Steve saying I should get guests before I go live, but I waited 10 minutes for guests. I don't think anybody actually wants to talk about Nephi. Now I'm going to get sniped. Unless nobody has the interest. Cameraman is on, Steve. Yeah, I turned on camera. That's the first thing I did when I came in here before I even went live, was to turn on cameraman. All right, so we got someone in here. Yada 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 is here.
Yeah, that was the same old Nephi.
Yeah, he's pretty. I don't know. I don't know where to start with that.
I think it's just, if you want to take on Nephi, you have to be really familiar with about half his arguments. So when he really is going off on a tangent to avoid answering anything close to what you asked him, you know, he can't totally pick a subject about wasps and cockroaches to, you know, tell you a little. I mean, I thought I was getting a lot of detail there about those wasps and cockroaches and how Nephi knew that, you know, they knew how to do this and it was in their brains, you know.
Not that it was actually just instinct in their species to do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sentimental person. I want to ascribe consciousness to as many things as possible, and you know, but you know, I don't think the wasps do much above instinct.
No, and I don't know. My problem is when he starts comparing DNA to information in the way we think of like a message.
Yeah, and that's
where,
and that's been explained to him why his thinking is off on that. He didn't think,
to me, that screams like, okay, because I've seen other people do that same thing, and then they try to, use the law of thermodynamics on it, and they try to use information theory on it, and it just does not apply in any way, shape, or form. So, I mean, I don't know where to go with it. Sometimes but it's not a message, and he, I think Fiona was talking to, who was it? Was it Mr. ID? No, it was Jungle Jargon. Are familiar with Jungle Jargon?
Yes, I am. Okay,
so you know how he can be. Mm-hmm. So Fiona was talking to Jungle Jargon. She's like, Jungle Jargon's kind of that whole same, things are programmed, things have information. So she basically said, well, if water goes and fills a hole in the ground because it's raining, is it programmed to go fill that hole? Like, it's like a pothole in the road. Mm-hmm. Why does it fill the container in that shape?
And Jungle Jargon, because he's a fantasist who believes everything is magical, says yes, that's God's plan.
No, he actually admitted, no, there's no, it's just a property of the water that it does that.
Okay.
So he kind of broke his own argument, because then she of course goes into DNA, and I think she brought up cytase, I think is what she brought up. And she says it's possible that there's a property of cytase that bonds it with its partner in the DNA, and that there's 3 electrons in a hydrogen atom that it needs to fulfill from its partner. And he's like, well, that's God's plan. And it's just like, oh, wow. And it's that kind of stuff that really bothers me when people make that connection.
Yeah. Now, did I miss the important thing that Nephi said about anosides, that part of the brain or something? Or am I mispronouncing that? I always like when Nephi brings up something I don't know about, because I feel like that's a challenge. I have to go and find out what that word means now. Yeah.
I must have missed that, because I actually had to go up to the store. I had to go up to the store and actually get some wine to deal with this tonight.
I've got to admit, I turn Nephi off once in a while.
Well, I was on mobile, but it gets a little sketchy sometimes on mobile.
Yeah. Oh, he had the star here.
Oh, Shannon came in. Cool.
Yay.
Shannon's probably got all the notes.
Hi.
Hey, Shannon.
Oh.
Hello. I've got to put my earphones in. I'm so mentally exhausted right now. I'm not even thinking about what I'm doing. Can't hear you. Now I can hear you.
I bet you that was a bit of a trip down trippy lane.
It was a lot to take in. Yeah, it was a lot to take in. I'm not quite decompressed from that yet. How do you guys think it went?
I hope you don't feel dirty. I mean,
no. Don't feel dirty, despite all the wasp sexy talk. No, I don't feel.
I'm just surprised. You people tend to get, like, when he talks to biologists and stuff like that, they get, of course, adversarial. And you're just so calm about it, Shannon. I just like your conversation with G-Man and now NephillimFree and True. You haven't talked to True Empiricism, but Mr. ID, it's just so, it's amazing to watch you work. I really have to congratulate you on this, because it's you have way more patience than I do. You really do.
Well, my goal isn't to attack anybody or change anybody's mind, or have a battle of my ideas, kick the shit out of your ideas. I'm more interested in trying to understand and figure out how people think and meet and interact with unique and interesting people. And You have to have a different sort of demeanor if that's your goal, I suppose.
Well, and I get that, but there's
I know, I understand. Sometimes
When-
I hear ideas and I go, ooh, especially like the neurology stuff. I was like, what?
well,
And
I'm
research methodology stuff, when he said, I read abstracts, I was like, but what about the methodology? And he said, well, I don't know that the methodology is as important as the conclusions. And my my eyes were just like, did they actually roll into the back of my head? Because I thought I might have had a stroke.
well, you were definitely blinking fast. I'm an epileptic, and when I heard him talk about that stuff, it was just like, you have got to be kidding me. I am fully cognizant of how not in control of my own physiology I am.
Right.
Like it could be any moment. It could be while I'm on this hangout.
Mhm.
I could literally just disappear from consciousness and
Like,
nothing
yeah, I have
in-
multiple sclerosis, so I understand.
yeah, nothing anybody could do about it. It could just freaking happen.
Right. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
it's like, and that's probably why you're so fascinated by the brain, because you do have MS. So
Well, actually, I was fascinated by the brain long before I got diagnosed with MS. I've only been diagnosed with MS for about 3 years, but I studied neurology in university. I just was fascinated by how people think, and I studied primarily perceptual cognition, impression formation, and communication.
well, I heard something recently, like, and this really fascinated me, and I read Sam Harris's Free Will, and they got into the part where they were doing functional MRIs on people,
Right.
and the functional MRIs is what really got me about free will.
Right.
The fact that they could tell what people had decided before the person was actually aware of what they had decided.
Yep.
Based on that functional MRI, I'm like, that is really telling, because you are literally a conscious observer at that point.
Right. Yeah. And just because we can't explain why consciousness is an emergent property of neurochemistry doesn't negate the fact that it probably is. I mean, even if you say, well, God did it, based on everything else that you would say that God did, you can see that he's put a design in place, because your argument is for design. So theoretically, there would be an underlying design, even given your argument, that allows for that to happen. We just haven't discovered it yet. Like even with that being the argument,
Right. But
I still don't. I get, like, that's why I like having these conversations, because I can't wrap my head around a lot of that stuff. I can't see that other perspective readily, so I like to talk to people to try to.
Somebody's off. I think Apologia is saying something about you making use of a gift of liquor.
A gift of what? What is he, Paul? What are you doing, Paul?
Let me see if I can track this down.
Do I have liquor?
No. The geek room said they need to buy you a liquor package.
Yes, please. Yep.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, you do. I don't know what
All
it is, but you need to do it.
So yes, maybe I'll
Send it over.
contribute. Maybe I'll contribute since I'm a patron of both you and Steve, the Geek Room. So I might even become a patron of Paul, because
Paul's
like
the best.
I like Paul, and
Paul's the best.
and I've been watching his videos for a while now, and I didn't realize he was part of the Great Debate community till about 3 months ago. So
Oh yeah, he is.
yeah,
That's how he and I met, actually.
yeah, and so it's when I hear people talk about the brain, it just it gets to me, because it's like, I probably know more about how my brain works than most people.
Yeah. It's a go-to argument, though, because it is so complex, and most people just innately
I
can't.
sit here looking at my 2 anticonvulsants in my hand.
Oh gosh.
Yeah.
Yeah. So overall, you feel like it went okay? Like, he seemed like he was very cordial. He was nice. He wasn't combative. He was slightly long-winded, but
This was a
Okay,
popular
I'll say.
hangout. You know, it might not have contained as much drama that other people would deliver. With Nephi.
Right.
I have to just, I have to congratulate you for not being rude to him and everything. I think that's a strong temptation for people,
Right. Well, you're never going to get something out of a dialogue if it turns into a confrontation. So if anybody's ever tuning in to watch me talk to somebody and is expecting it to descend into a screaming match or some sort of conflict, or for me to get really, I mean, I can get impatient, but for me to get really, combative with somebody, it's probably not a thing that's going to happen, because it negates the purpose of the conversation that I'm having with them. And that's why I'm there. So I'd be counteracting my own goals. So there's no point in it.
I want to ask a question. It probably doesn't reflect well on NephillimFree, but I mean, I would just ask you to, take a moment or two and think, was there anything he contributed to you that you thought was a new way of looking at things that you would take seriously?
No, I don't. It's nothing that I haven't really heard before. The only thing that I didn't kind of understand, or not understand, but wasn't able to, access an explanation for, was how consciousness is an emergent property of neurology. And that's a question that neuroscientists have been asking since time immemorial, and we don't have an answer for it. But that doesn't mean that there won't be an answer one day, and maybe we never will get an answer, but that isn't evidence to me of the existence of a God, and certainly not specifically the existence of a biblical creator.
Well, Nephi has his criticism of what he calls materiality, and I don't know if you would even label yourself with that, or any of us would, but he seems to really promote that for the discussions he wants to have.
So he sees himself, you would think, as an opponent of a materialistic worldview?
In a sense, but mostly he finds it wanting compared to his immaterial actors, determining what human beings are and everything through his biblical world viewpoint.
Sure.
He really thinks that looks stronger to everybody in comparison to anybody who would have more materialistic explanations about what goes on in people's consciousness.
Well, you can always insert God and just mic drop and say, I win the conversation, right? Because he can do anything and everything. So he's an answer to every question that you don't have the answer to. So when people insert God to answer a question that we don't currently have an answer to, that's not compelling to me, because there's been instances in the past where the answer has been God until we knew better. So just the fact that I don't, or we don't know something, isn't ever evidence of any sort of supernatural force to me. Can't see why it would be or should be.
Yeah. I just think Nephi has a thing in his head that he thinks that the scientific community has reached a point that they definitely have described it this way and that way and everything. And he thinks his immaterial actors or his non-material things are something that really explains it well.
Yeah, to him it may.
Yeah.
But I think that all depends on, he's obviously got a very personal interpretation of the Bible, right? So he's looking at everything with a presuppositional viewpoint. So, and he hasn't answered every question because God. So, you can't.
He has a speech for every question.
Yes, he does. Very prepared too, as it would seem. It very much seemed like at certain points in time, he literally was reading me quotations that must have, unless he is a real fast Googler, He must have.
No, he's done that to other people. You might ask yourself, is that something fair for someone to do in any hangout and everything? And it
Right.
might not be, but Neffy's done it for years.
So he has.
I think he used to work in telemarketing. I have a question from the chat.
Oh, okay, sure. I can't see the chat. Sorry.
It says if NephillimFree, or I guess I can't ask NephillimFree, but or Shannon Q, familiar at all with the perennial philosophy?
No, I don't think so.
Perennialism, I looked it up. It's the philosophy. Is a perspective in modern spirituality that views each of the world's religious traditions as sharing a single metaphysical truth or origin, also known as the idea of the one.
So all religions are a manifestation of one God that humans interpreted and transcribed differently?
I guess. I mean, so to answer your question, Cafe, no, we're
No.
not exactly familiar with all that.
Yeah,
But I mean, the concept is there, but
didn't Baha'is already do something like that? Am I saying that right? Baha'is? No, never mind.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I just pulled up the wiki, to be honest with you.
If I answer a question right, do I get that liquor package? What do I have to do to get the liquor package?
Okay, Baha'i faith is related, he says, and the mystical experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
No, I'm not familiar. I haven't studied philosophy to any great extent, and I'll never profess to knowing something that I don't.
Yeah,
it's interesting.
I'm not going to pretend to know that much about all that.
We're the same then. No.
But aren't we only supposed to talk about philosophy in the great debate community?
Oh, is that so? Okay.
Oh, no.
Breaking all the rules then. Just talking about neurology and evolution. Biblical interpretation and wasp sex and beetle death and all kinds of stuff. Can't wait to talk to Rose. I don't know who Rose is, but I'm excited to talk to her.
Rose McGowan?
Patton, I believe. Steve said no spoilers though. I like to go in blind. Everybody knows that.
Yeah.
So you're running the gamut then, aren't you?
I guess. I suppose so. Steve's got lots of ideas of who I should talk to.
Yeah.
Well, it's interesting because the names you've actually talked to are in the past, they've caused a lot of people, and I hate to defame people at all because it's not my intention to defame them, but they're inherently difficult to talk to. Like I'm sure you noticed NephillimFree, he's long-winded, for lack of a better term.
Right. Yeah. No, that's fair.
And it's kind of want him to get to his point so you could get a word in edgewise.
Right.
So, or with G-Man, you have to be careful because if you approach him the wrong way, he's going to.
With G-Man, it just seemed like so long as he felt like I was treating him with respect,
yeah,
he was willing to open up.
Mm-hmm.
So long as he felt like he wasn't under attack, he was willing to open up and discuss things.
With G-Man, you can't make him feel like he's an idiot or he's under attack, because he'll shut down and he'll turn around and he won't listen at that point. Right.
That would happen with a lot of people, though, I would presume. Like, if I wouldn't be super affected because I'm a weird person, but if I was talking to you right now and I was speaking to you in a very clearly condescending tone and I was using, florid language, and I was speaking to you in a way that made it clear that I felt like you were in some way inferior to me, or that was, degrading to you. You wouldn't have a lot of respect for what I was saying.
Yeah,
Because you're judging how I'm treating you, right? So that's why it's important to treat people with respect, even when their ideas are, just way, more than the reasonable, well, what you would think a reasonable person would be able to assimilate. But it still doesn't mean they don't deserve respect just because you don't respect their ideas. They're still people. They're not their ideas.
Right. So, anybody else want to join? Because, I've kind of run out of things to talk about with this.
I got to go soon anyway. I've got to work in the morning. Steve asked me to jump on for about 10 minutes.
I just wish there was something that stuck out a little bit more. We don't feel like, we're going to bring that to your doorstep and everything. We see that more like with Nephi. There was just a lot of stuff that was repeated by Nephi that we've heard before and everything. I guess I will just say, what did you really feel in the last conversation? What did you really feel like you wanted to dig into with what he was saying?
I wanted to. If he speaks about any one individual topic for such an extended length of time that it was hard to dig into anything in any sort of concise way with him.
I figured I'd come in for 5 minutes.
Oh, hi, Midnight Sparkle. But yeah, I didn't feel like I was able to get a lot of answers to my questions out of him, unfortunately. Like when we were speaking about morality, specifically in like biblical morality and the morality of God, and where I had found some conflicts, I don't feel like his answers to those questions were, well, it's part of God's plan. Well, how can you reconcile that with an idea of objective morality if God's not demonstrating objective morality? Well, he had a plan that he had to enact. Yeah, but he's God, so he could have enacted his plan whatever way he wanted to. Well, this is the way that he wanted to do it. Well, then how is it moral?
Yeah, they just, I don't know.
It just went in circles to the point that I couldn't get anywhere.
Yeah, there there are some of them, who will try to say, oh, well, who am I to judge God? If he says murdering a child is okay, then who am I to judge him? I'm like, are you fucking insane?
I might have phrased it different, but yeah, exactly. Like I brought up the
Midnight
Egyptians.
Is very blunt. Midnight is very blunt.
That's good. I appreciate blunt. Blunt is good.
Blunt is good, Midnight. We love you for it.
Thanks.
Yeah, so I guess it wasn't as action packed as, although I don't think anything could live up to G-Man, man. G-Man's he is a bag of toys, that guy. I love him. He has a party in a box. Oh,
yeah.
He couldn't even tell. It was fascinating. If he wasn't talking, he was doing stuff like off camera.
Yeah. He even pulled out his satanic Bible.
I know. Oh, I could talk to him for hours. I don't know if I could talk to NephillimFree for hours. He was really nice, though. He was very cordial.
But he could talk to you for hours.
Yeah. I find it's mentally tasking when you're in conversations where you have to struggle for them to not be one-sided. Like you have to fight for it to not just be a lecture. And I felt like that was kind of the case with him. That I was fighting to get my words in. And then when I did get my words in, he wasn't really addressing what I was saying. He was more so just saying, yeah, well, back to what I was saying.
The impression I get of Nephi, and I don't know if this is like, because I'm not like a psychological major or anything like that.
Sure.
I just have a very basic, the basic courses you have to take in high school and college for psychology.
Yeah.
But I get the feeling that he's not like really, he's humble in a way that is not like other people. He's really is trying to come to grips with a view that makes sense to him.
Sure. Yeah, I get that.
but not necessarily in a real valid way. Like you said, with the whole methodology isn't important. Well, of course methodology is important.
Yeah.
How could it not be important? Like, if they did the experiment in a completely ludicrous way, then their conclusion would be wrong.
Yes, like I mentioned, I did a post hoc analysis on Tompkins' genetic research for one of the Apologia videos, and it was the first time, I've looked at their journal before, and the first time I really looked at it, it infuriated me that they even called it a journal because it wasn't peer reviewed. It didn't seem to adhere to any specific standards that one would expect from anything anybody would dare to call science. It was just the artifice of a journal so that Kevin, yay. It was just the artifice of a journal so that they could present pseudoscience in a package that makes it look like science, so that people that are looking for reaffirmation will have something to point to and say, see, I have science too, when really they're lay people that don't understand exactly how science is supposed to be conducted and what steps need to be taken. So it's almost like a trick. So it made me very, very angry. Very, very angry, because they were tricking people into thinking this is science, and it's people that have PhDs that are doing this. So it gives that added level of authority because, well, this is Dr. So-and-so, who's an expert in X field, who wrote this article. And then you read the article and it's just a pile of crap. That's just the method section's this big, and it doesn't even explain how the research was conducted. The one I read, it spent 100 and some words just explaining the processing specifications of the computer that they conducted the analysis on, and there was no data set. And there was no explanation as how they conducted the comparative analysis between the two genomes. It was just like, this is the computer we ran it on, this is the program we used. That's done, right? And here's our conclusions.
Yeah, and then you get people like Georgia Purnham. She drives me nuts. She drives me nuts. How could somebody?
Ooh, I just had a stroke again. Oh God, I hate her so much. Deep breaths. Where's my booze? Geek room. Where's my booze?
So Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hello, Kevin. Hi,
What's
Kevin.
up?
How you doing?
Hey, good.
Hey.
I watched part of your interaction. That was good. I liked it.
Oh, thanks. It wasn't as action-packed as G-Man, but I enjoyed it. And I did. I felt like I got a good vibe for what Nephilim is about. Although somebody did tell me that he has... somebody did give me a spoiler. Genetically Modified Skeptic accidentally gave me a spoiler last night while we were talking, and he told me that he had a theory that there's water geysers were the reasons for craters on the moon, and I really wanted to hear about that, so I'm kind of disappointed I didn't.
Oh,
Bukkake theory.
you forgot to ask him, or what was...
No, I didn't want to ask him because
Oh, okay.
I wanted to kind of let the conversation flow on its own. And part of entering into these conversations, I don't like to know anything ahead of time about the people.
Sure.
And I didn't want to take for granted that was something, like it could have been something that he had said off the cuff in the past that wasn't anything that he meant or that he had since recanted. So I didn't want to take that for granted.
It was a really big thing, though, when it happened.
Oh, was it? Okay.
Yeah, it caused much mirth.
Well, yeah, because how could water expel from the earth with enough pressure to reach the moon and on front and back too? Like,
Yeah,
moon's tidal locked, right? I wanted to hear.
It's a posit. It's a explanation, and that's air quotes you can't see. Explanation for what happened to the water that supposedly flooded the earth.
A good thing to remember is with
How did it reach
God's
the-
magic, anything is possible.
Oh, right. I forgot sometimes that God is magic.
Right? How would it reach the moon in reality? Well, the answer to that is it couldn't physically do so, because in order to reach the moon and break the gravitational force force of the Earth, it would have to vaporize, and that would literally kill everybody on this and everything on this planet.
If it reached escape velocity, it would be.
It would be steam, and it would kill it.
And then it would hit space where there's no gravity, and that would. I just needed to hear. I needed to hear. I'm so disappointed I didn't. I just needed to hear. And you said they too. So is there more than?
Oh yeah, he's not the only young Earth creationist that posits that.
I live in a cave. I swear to God, I live in a cave. Wow.
It's not a bad thing you don't know about these people. I mean, meet your first flat earther, you know.
I've never met one in real life. Oh, is there any flat earthers around here? I would love that. Steve, where's Steve? Let me at that.
Have Steve hook you up with Red's Rhetoric. Red's Rhetoric knows a ton of them.
Okay, I don't know who Red's Rhetoric is.
Well, he's one of these guys that goes after flat earthers.
You know, honestly, Shannon, if you're really interested in talking to people who really truly believe in the flat Earth, you don't really even need Steve for that. You can actually just go over to Rand's channel and have a conversation with him. He's a really cool guy. I mean, I don't agree with a lot of the things he says, but I think you'd have a fantastic discussion with him.
Okay.
So his name's Rand Campbell. So
Rand Campbell.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Wow. I love
Steve,
YouTube.
Steve just said he's getting Rand Campbell for you. So
okay.
And Rose Patton.
I'm a lunatic. Why do I want to do this? I need a therapist.
You know, honestly, Shannon, to be quite honest with you, you're actually proving something that I was talking about a couple years ago, is that with a lot of these people that a lot of people think their ideas are, loony, wacky, whatever, and they may be, but I think the right approach, quote unquote, right approach, is to actually sit down and listen to what they have to say. Because if you go into a conversation, you immediately start shooting down their ideas and being adversarial with them, then you're going to get that right back in your face. And it's just going to undermine the whole conversation, and you're not going to have a good dialogue. So you don't necessarily need to accept what they have to say, but I think too many people are quick to judge and they don't listen to what the other person has to say.
Yeah,
So,
people want to batter each other with their ideas until one of them is declared victorious in the conversation. And that's no way to change anybody's mind. If your
Correct.
goal is for the person that you're having a discussion with to be able to see a different perspective, then just being rude and dismissive to them is not an effective communication strategy. It's a horrible communication strategy. And if your goal is to be open enough in any conversation that you might have the opportunity to change your mind, which you always should be open to that. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, you're just going to be locked into your pre-existing conceptions, and that's no way to live either. So you shouldn't. I mean, I don't think that anybody's going to convince me that the Earth is flat, but that doesn't mean that I shouldn't respect the person that I'm talking to. I believe that you can respect the person that you're speaking to without respecting their ideas. They're two different things, and people conflate them. And that causes unnecessary conflict in conversations. And then they end up going nowhere, and they just descend into a screaming match, and everybody leaves upset. I'd like to leave conversations that, with building a relationship with that person. Maybe one day down the line, he'll reach out to me and we can have a conversation, and he might at least come to some sort of concession. That wouldn't have happened if he had felt I disrespected him.
Did you happen to catch the after hangout over your conversation with G-Man last
week?
About
5 minutes of it, and then I fell asleep. But somebody told me that it went off the rails pretty quickly.
Yeah, it did, and I think that's an example of people getting adversarial, because people go into those conversations with the intent, and it happens on both sides. It's not just people trying to say, "Hey, G-Man, we think you're wrong," but it's also G-Man saying, "Hey, you're wrong too." So it happens on both sides of the conversation.
Right. Well, he thought I was wrong, but we still.
Sure.
Well, and I was moderator, and I was just trying to be hands off. And towards the end there, I was trying to draw it to a close, so I kind of had to have a hand in it, because it was 2 hours. 2 hours later, I was like, "I'm done. I want to go to bed."
Well,
for sure.
The other thing with G-Man is he's got, what, 4 or 5 years now of bad blood with people. I mean, people constantly go on hangouts and try to challenge him. And these same people seem to think in the back of their minds that they can go into, the 43rd hangout and approach him in the exact same way. And that somehow he actually might, listen to what they have to say. And it just doesn't work that way, especially with G-Man, because of he comes from a different type of environment, and it's kind of foreign to this environment.
Interesting.
I don't know. You have to talk to him differently. I'm not saying coddle the guy, but just talk to him like a human being instead of someone who's an adversary all the time. So,
Yeah,
but anyway.
I thought he seemed like he's super sensitive to people even giving the perception that they think they're smarter than he is.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So that immediately, I think, gives him a sense of sensitivity, and then it can escalate quickly if your verbal interactions with him reinforce that.
Yep.
And then he goes on the defensive.
Yep.
And it benefits nobody. Because I found him interesting to talk to. I like talking to him. I thought he was fun, actually. I mean, other people that have a history with him may not. But I don't have a history with him, and I judge people based on my individual interactions with them, not on a history that's dictated to me by other people. So I thought he was fun to talk to, and I would talk to him again. And as of right now, having leave the interaction the two of us had, I respect G-Man. He was nice to me, but like I don't respect a lot of his ideas. Like I don't believe that angels populated the earth with Nephilim, and that's why God had to kill everybody and then only Noah's family were human anymore. I don't believe that, and I don't necessarily respect that as an opinion, but he was polite to me, so I respect him.
Right, and like in that
people.
in his apology video to Steve, like he's like, "Hey, I respect Steve for where he's taking the channel and stuff." I commented on that video. I was like, "I'm sorry, I came across like kind of a jerk in the thing, but this video is well received." And it was a tacit apology for kind of having to be a jerk because I have to, as a moderator, do my job on the channel.
Would there be any benefit? Should I go back and watch the hangout? I'm sorry I wasn't around.
I mean, you can if you want to. I don't know if there's much benefit to it. I mean, there's people in there that they're like triggers for G-Man. I mean, and I'd be honest with you, they are, but it's.
Were they antagonistic to him, or did he just? Oh, okay.
Totally. Well, I mean, it's twofold. Basically, you've got, like I said, there's many years with people, so you have that level of, you've had this antagonistic relationship with people for years, so you expect that. And then there's the second level of like, yes, immediately they go in and challenge him. So
right, so they have a pre-existing history that it's
exactly.
Probably you'd have to do something very different in order to overcome that.
Yeah,
history.
and even if you did something completely different, it would take time to overcome that bad blood relationship you have with someone. If I tell you, Shannon, you can go fuck yourself or something like that, and I'm constantly adversarial with you, down the road I could apologize to you, but you'd still be kind of hands off and go, I don't know about Kevin.
Oh no, I hold grudges, man.
Exactly. And that's a really
Kevin told me to go fuck myself. Yeah. Nobody talked to Kevin.
And that's somebody that was actually in that hangout with me, so she could probably speak to this as well, because Jade is one of the people that can actually get G-Man to calm down, so I'll let her in.
Oh, okay. Is Jade here now?
Yes.
Am I missing? Oh, hi, Jade. Hi, everybody.
But I mean, what you said, Shannon, with regards to holding a grudge, I think G-Man is somebody who very much does that as well. So it makes sense.
Hi, Jade.
Somebody.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, did you just yell? Startled. I can hear you, Jade.
Sorry.
Oh, you're cutting out.
I kept clicking. Oh, okay. Wait.
Oh, you're cutting out. Oh, I know Jade.
Okay, hang on a minute.
I didn't hang out with Jade before. Jade was in the New Year's hangout with us.
I've got too much stuff open.
Oh, you might have to refresh there.
Yeah, your mic is super crackly, Jade.
Yeah, I'll refresh, but I need to close a bunch of stuff too, so that's part of it. You know how
I
you
gotta
get.
go.
Oh, hang on.
I gotta go find Evan on Twitter now too, so that I can talk to him. I'd like to continue talking to people. I don't know how to find G-Man though, other than his YouTube channel. He doesn't have a Twitter.
He's on Skype. That's his main communication is Skype.
Oh, I don't have Skype. I just got Discord for the first time the other day. I'm such a hippie. I don't even own a microwave. I'm a weird person. I don't watch television. I live in a cave where I didn't know that, water caused all the craters on the moon and that evolution isn't real.
Well, for what it's worth, Shannon, I really actually enjoy what you're doing. I think it's
Thanks,
a good. It'll kind of teach people the idea that if you do really start from scratch and you actually have a real conversation and you listen instead of always wanting to interrupt people, I think that's a good way to start. You don't have to agree with everybody. I mean, I'm sure you have plenty of friends in real life that you don't agree with on everything, or most things you probably don't agree with, but there's something about them that actually is interesting. And I think there's something you can take away from any type of, friendship that's beneficial. So,
and any interaction, even an interaction with somebody who doesn't agree with you, at least you're challenging yourself, right? If nothing else, then it helps you form and construct better communication strategies and form and construct better arguments and challenge your pre-existing belief set.
And, the truth is speaking to that, one of the best things, at least for me, when it comes to the flat earth thing, was that once it started becoming popular, it actually challenged me and a couple of my friends, because we didn't know how to prove it. We'd always been taught from grade school that was the case. So you have to sit and you think to yourself, prove this. And I had no idea, seriously. So I actually had to look up some of this stuff. So I found there's something actually good about that, in my opinion. So
yeah, it forces you to challenge things that you just took for granted as true.
there you go. Exactly.
Jay,
Okay, so how do I sound? How do I sound now?
much better.
I can
Much
hear
better.
you.
Okay, good. Yeah, I needed to close a bunch of stuff too. You know how it gets. Like researching stuff. You end up with all these little tabs all the way across.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So.
What?
So yeah, I only saw part of the hangout. Because frankly, Neff puts me to sleep.
I can see that. Yeah.
and I've heard the stuff he's saying over and over and over again.
Yeah, because it's all scripted.
And he, like so many of them, he keeps repeating the same mantras without ever learning anything.
Yeah, he's closed.
I mean, here he was telling you again that mutations were mostly harmful.
Yeah, that blew my mind. But he admitted that some were benign, but then he wouldn't expound upon that and acknowledge that sometimes benign mutations can make people more fit for an environment inadvertently, and that can cause evolution, because evolution doesn't have a direction. Yeah.
I have two. I have two not benign mutations.
Oh,
I
okay.
have two advantageous mutations.
Oh, wow, cool.
People probably do as well. Each of us humans has about 150, I think it is, mutations.
Oh, wow.
And but see, that's the point. Most of them are neutral. They don't do anything.
Right.
Or if they do something, you don't know about it.
Sure.
You could have a mutation in your hair color or eye color. I worked with a woman who had gold eyes. I mean, super gold eyes. It was weird.
Awesome.
And she and her sister had gold eyes. She used to wear dark glasses most of the time, because if she was walking down the street, people do a double take and like walk right up to her and look at her.
Yeah.
Okay,
I'd
but my two mutations. Yeah, her eyes are incredible. I mean, they're beautiful. I mean, what you call light gold eyes, but that's just a variation of brown.
Right. Or hazel.
But hers were like super gold. No, so I have two mutations. Probably gene duplication. I don't know for sure, but
sure.
It's I have more rods in my eyes than most people.
Oh.
So,
Okay. So
like
you
when
have
I go
better
to the eye
peripheral
doctor,
vision and motion
than most people.
Cool.
And it's kind of funny, when I was a kid, I was always in the dark. My mom would come in and turn on a light and say, "You're reading in the dark. How can you see in the dark?" And I didn't know what she meant, because I could see just fine.
Wow.
And it wasn't until I got older and started wearing glasses that the ophthalmologist would look in my eyes and go, "Whoa, you've got more rods in your eyes than most people." So I see really well in the dark.
Cool.
And that's the kind of thing that I think could come about by gene duplication. It's just your rods or something.
Yeah.
The other one is an interesting one, and the gene, I don't have the reference anymore because it's from so long ago.
Mhm.
But at one point, the gene was traced to Denmark, which I found interesting since I'm German and Irish.
Okay. Me too.
But Germany is right next to Denmark,
Mhm.
and the Danes invaded Ireland
Okay.
a number of times. They went Viking and invaded Ireland. So, I possibly get it from both sides. My skin changes color in the sun.
Oh.
I'm not talking about tanning.
So you have
of
like a
course I'm old
temporary
now.
hyperpigmentation?
Yes.
Cool.
So,
Ooh.
for example, that it's not as obvious now that I'm older. But when I was in my 20s, it was really obvious. My friends got a kick out of it. Because I'd go out I'd get up, I'd get dressed in the morning, and I'd look down, and I'm all one color, right? I'd put on my bathing suit and would go to the beach. I live in Southern California, so I spent a lot of time at the beach. By the end of the day, I'd go home and take a shower. I'd look down, and I was two colors.
Neat.
Now the frustrating part, because I grew up like in the 1960s. I was a teenager during the 1960s, and of course at that time in history, everybody wanted to tan.
Sure.
And so like, I wanted a tan, so I was, whoa, I got a tan. But I knew it was going to happen. I get up the next morning, I look down, gone.
Different. Aw. Faded right
I know,
away.
frustrating. Yeah. Well, it's just a temporary change.
Sure.
Now the interesting thing about that,
Mhm.
I'm pretty fair skinned.
Sure.
However, I do tan very well, and I don't burn very easily. So for a fair skinned person, I don't burn easily. So the way I look at this is probably like a really great adaptation
Mhm.
for fair skinned people
Right.
because it keeps you from burning. So my skin changes color rather than burning.
Yeah. Have you brought that to him? Did he acknowledge that that's a mutation, or
Oh, he ignores it. He ignores it.
so he just
Fiona and I were in a long. Oh, yeah.
so
Fiona
he's
and I
just
were in
not
a long
willing to
hangout with him.
introduce any new information that might contradict. So he's more than willing to go out and seek information that reaffirms what he already believes, but he's not willing to
Right.
accept in any information at all, no matter how valid it is, that would contravene.
Exactly.
But that's
He
unfortunate.
rejects
That
it.
makes me feel bad for him.
Yeah.
Makes me feel bad.
Well, yeah, I do too. And it's also why he's not a good source. And you try to tell some of our creationist friends that he's not a good source, but they think he knows science. What I was going to tell you is
Oh.
Fiona and I were in this long hangout with him once. Of course, Fiona's a molecular biologist. She knows her stuff. I'm not a biologist. I've just read a lot and talked to a lot of people. And I've had tons and tons of classes. I just never got a degree. But so he wanted to know how a new structure, how a mutation could cause a new structure.
Sure.
And Fiona and I kept giving him examples, and he kept denying it was a new structure. I think
Oh
he
my
wants
gracious.
for a new structure somebody suddenly sprout a new lung or something.
Yeah, that seems like to
there's-
be what he. I mean, he was talking about fish coming out of water, but like he wouldn't accept the fact that a limb could have a series of permutations that allowed it. He, like, in his mind, I think it was like a fin just was like leg, and like
Right.
like he couldn't
and
accept that there was any sort of intermediary, and he wouldn't even accept the fact that intermediary fossils existed.
Or
Like-
the idea that a swim bladder is actually where our lungs came from, because that's kind of
Right.
where it did come from, because that's an adaptation that allows a fish to maintain buoyancy.
right.
Oh.
And about the limb thing. Now, this is something I'm really interested in, which is the evolution of the vertebrate limb.
Yeah.
I don't know why I am. I just am. The things that we find ourselves interested in is kind of curious.
Sure.
You
should talk to
but-
RJ.
He denies that. See, he denies that any changes take place. You heard him say, I only watched part of it, but I did get as far as him saying, well, you'd have to have all these new tendons and ligaments and stuff like that. No, you
Yeah.
don't. You don't. And the prime example is lobe-fin fish.
Okay.
So we have regular fish, right? What we think of as regular fish, okay? Now there's a scientific term for you.
Normal
And over
fish.
here we have
the normal fish.
and over here, which in a way, since we are kind of lobe-fin fish, that makes us abnormal fish.
We're in a different
Okay.
tank in the display.
I know, yeah, exactly. Don't play with those fish over there. They're mutating, and who knows what they're going to become.
Right.
But a lobe-fin fish, so you think of a fish and you think of what the fin looks like, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so what happens if you put that fin on a little stalk, so to speak?
Mm-hmm.
So you've got a little stalk, and then the fin's now at the end of the stalk. Instead of the fin being attached like right direct to the skeleton, let's put it this way: instead of the fish looking like it's attached directly to the skeleton,
Sure.
there's a little stalk there, a little bit of bone, and the fish is at the end of the fin is at the end of that.
So then it's kind of like a foot or a hand or an arm. And
right. That's where we get the lobe-finned fish.
Mm-hmm.
And you can go look at skeletons of these, and it's great. You can go look at the fossils, and we have lobe-finned fish today that you can look at.
Wow.
So if you think of a mutation, imagine that you've got these bones there, the fin, what we're calling the fin. These aren't like real technical scientific terms for people watching,
Yeah.
but so you've got this fin, right?
Sure.
And it's attached to the skeleton, and it's attached by certain bones. So you have a mutation that makes the bones a little longer.
Yeah.
Well, what's interesting about that is that making the bones a little longer, sort of like sticking the fin out there a little bit, like I said, putting it on a little stalk. Think about that. You can move your fin in a different angle. You can get some push behind it. It's a little bit like, right, and you put the upper part of your arm solidly against your torso, and you move your arm, the bottom part of your arm.
Yeah.
Right? You can only move so far, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then if you move from the shoulder, you've got this huge sweep of arm. So for fish, that's a little bit like what it's like. But not only that, you can now turn it. Right? 'Cause again, like from your elbow, you can only turn so far, but from your shoulder, you can turn really far. Now, of course, for people who are listening, yes, I know we're talking about a different kind of connection to the elbow, the rotator connection to the arm, but you get the to the shoulder, you get the idea. So that would be an advantage for some fish. So some fish have this little stalk and a little elongated bone or bones that because one of the things these people don't understand, they say, well, but it had to mutate both bones or something like that. Yes, that's because the gene that regulates the one regulates the other.
Because they just can't wrap their head around the fact that you can have one bone and then in their mind, all of a sudden there's two, right? So like even if their counter argument, just to play devil's advocate to that would be, yeah, well, that they already had that bone. So how did they get the second bone, like from the shoulder to the elbow? How did that happen then? Like,
well,
where did that
they already
bone?
had that? They already had the bone. It was just a little tiny bone.
Mm-hmm. No, I'm on your team, bone. Jane.
I know. But no, what happens is they just simply deny it. And if you try to show them the fossil evidence, again, they'll just continue to deny it. Even though we have really good examples came out of water.
Yeah. And
another really interesting thing, because the lungs were mentioned. Yeah, the swim bladder. Mm-hmm. Because swim bladders are very vascular. Blood vessels.
Sure.
And so even though the swim bladder is there for buoyancy, change that goes on. Some oxygen goes into the blood from the vascular swim bladder. But here's the point that a lot of these folks don't get. I try to explain this a million times, but they just won't listen. It's just a mental block. It's like the minute you open a certain door, they slam it in their heads. Yeah. Animals don't breathe by just one method. Fish that can breathe air. Look at the mud skipper. There are fish that if you ever had a what is it like the Siamese
Which could be
fighting
looked
fish,
at as a
fish like that.
transitional form in that case because they
Oh
are
yeah, it is.
able to come up on
Oh,
land.
you should talk to Fiona about that.
I
She
don't know
actually
who
does some
Fiona
work in the
is.
lab.
I don't know who Fiona
Oh,
is.
she does.
Oh, she needs to meet Fiona, Jade.
Oh God, you need to have a talk with Fiona and ask her about mud skippers, because what's their relatives? Oh crap, I can't remember. But anyway, it looks like mud skippers are kind of like on their way to being amphibian or maybe half amphibian,
Okay.
white fish. It's really interesting. They
Ah,
are a transitional form.
right.
There are a
Which
number
would
of
be like a good, yeah.
number of
That's a
fish you
good
probably see.
existing argument of transitional form. You don't even need fossil evidence if they say, animals aren't transitioning now. You can say, well, here's an example of an animal that
But we're
clearly,
seeing that now that we're looking closer, we're seeing that in some other animals. For
sure.
instance, the breathing. They talk about, oh, birds breathe this way, reptiles breathe this other way. Actually, no, it's not that simple. Some birds breathe more like reptiles. Some reptiles breathe more like birds. Guess what? But
I
for the
still can't believe
breathing,
that he believes that all of those animals just became extinct and these were the successful animals and that all of those animals existed on the earth simultaneously. And he's a young earth creationist, so he believes in kinds. So that means that they would have had to either all be on the boat or he would have to believe at the very least in what they call microevolution. And it doesn't even seem like he is a proponent of microevolution. So I find it hard to wrap my head around how he thinks about it. Like I try to get my head to where his head is, and I'm having trouble finding the steps. Like, I mean, you'll admit that there's mutations, but you won't admit there's evolution.
Right.
You think that there was animals on Noah's Ark, but that means that every animal that's ever existed had to have existed simultaneously, which means they either all had to be on the boat or there had to be like all of that stuff just doesn't make any logical sense. But like to just be so certain, like what makes somebody that certain? Like, why do you need to be that certain? Why? Am I the only person who wonders that stuff?
No,
What
there
makes
is no reason.
be that certain?
And there is no reason. It's actually a very peculiar religious position.
It is.
And it
Most
dates
Christians
young earth
reconcile.
creationism. Well, I am a Christian. I didn't know if you knew that.
Oh no, I didn't. But
So-
but you obviously reconcile to
I have no
to
problem with the
right.
evolution.
So you
No,
see it as
you're
allegorical.
a Roman Catholic, and even the Pope even just said, I love that one quote Pope Francis said about when he was talking about evolution. God is not a musician.
Sure.
Like God didn't snap everything into existence. God is not a musician.
Sure.
But no, there's no problem with it whatsoever. Dates from like the mid to latter part of from the latter part of the 19th century to the early part of the 20th century. And this is the part they hate. They hate modern young earth creationism Adventists, especially a guy named George McCready Price. But they won't admit that because they with the Seventh-day Adventists, because Seventh-day
Right.
Adventists aren't real Christians.
So
And
okay,
so
if I'm
it's
understanding
new.
correctly, young earth creationism wasn't just pre-existing and then once the introduction of science came along. So the Bible was always interpreted as to a certain degree would have had to have been allegorical or mythological.
Yeah.
And that this was sort of a counter position that came up within the past couple of centuries.
Yes.
I wonder
And it's
why.
because, and guess what? Flat Earth creation, the flat Earth, modern flat Earth belief also dates from that same time period.
Really? I thought the flat Earth thing was like new.
But it's from the late
Like
19th
really
century.
new. Like the internet made those people crazy.
No, it is spread now. But the origin of it was pretty much almost disappeared for decades, except for a few people.
Okay.
And it's the internet that's made it explode, but it actually originated in the late 19th century at about the same time young earth creationism.
Wow.
Caused this to happen was the explosion of scientific knowledge. Because this is when you had Lyell and Darwin and
Sure.
all these other people doing all this research and coming up with new ideas. And it was very threatening.
Wow.
And so there was a backlash to the intense amount of scientific knowledge. And at that time, like everything was like, I like to joke about how I spent a lot of time in the 19th century, because I do spend a lot of time in the 19th century. You know, Google Books is great because it has all these books you can actually read what they were doing and read about what they were doing.
Sure.
But people were utterly fascinated by every discovery. And here in the United States during that time, they had what was called the Dinosaur Wars.
Okay.
This was this really interesting period. If you ever read about it, there's some books about it, and I think a movie or two or something. It was by two paleontologists called Marsh and Cope, and they were rivals. Were trying to, each outdo the other in finding fossils. And remember, this was like a really new thing. Wow, because the word dinosaur was only invented in the 19th century. I mean, there were bones before, but nobody put it together really before iguanodon.
Sure.
Iguanodon wrong like 3 or 4 times before they finally got it right. And the first couple of times, it's hysterically bad. It looks like a rhinoceros with this thing on its nose. Well, they didn't understand biomechanics. They didn't understand, that well how joints are fit together and things like that.
Mhm.
So what happened though? This was so popular. People were following Marsh and Cope in the newspapers the way that people follow sports teams.
Oh, cool.
It was that popular. So it was a huge big deal at the time. So science, wasn't just hidden in the corners or a few people who were the elite or anything. No, it was everybody. We come where some of our the misunderstandings come from, because the tabloid press existed back then as it did now.
Yeah.
And there was a publication called the London Illustrated News. Oh crap, I forgot his name. Anyway, when they came up with Nebraska Man, when the guy, they found the tooth, and they thought this tooth might be a hominid. Illustrated News ran with the story. Primitive human found in the United States, and they asked this artist to draw a picture. Well, the artist, nobody had any idea what this looked like. So this artist drew this picture based kind of on Cro-Magnon man.
Sure.
So when you see these pictures of Nebraska Man, this didn't come from any scientist. It came from a tabloid publication in London.
Oh, it was like a caricature sketch.
Yeah, and they
Interesting.
just asked some artist. The artist, he had no clue what was going on.
Mhm.
Well, okay, if it's an ancient human, it must be like Cro-Magnon man, so I'll just draw this picture, and you will see creationists over and over again saying, see, this is what science thinks. They thought that this was a real human. They show you the stupid picture. Within a few years, they came out, not the original guy, another guy who was an expert in teeth, by the way, came out
Indeed.
and you can look it up. In science, in the journal Science, because it's been in existence for a long time, and he explained that, oh, guess what? It's not a peccary tooth, not really a pig tooth. It's a peccary, which is
Okay.
slightly different. It's a peccary molar. But what's interesting about this, and again, see, this is where they only believe what they want to believe. And I've read the papers about when, quote unquote, Nebraska Man, which they didn't call it, scientists didn't call it that, when they first proposed it. And I've read the science paper where it's a peccary tooth. Is in that, well, it's not exactly a retraction, it's a correction. He explains why they thought it might be a human tooth. Now, remember, back in the day, they didn't have like photographs going across that. You had a lot of drawings, and the mail took a while to get through. But what they went by mostly were descriptions. is this particular molar, old molars that had been found in Java. I think were Homo erectus.
You're so
But-
knowledgeable. I feel like I just got the entire history of evolution.
But the thing is, yeah, but the thing is,
I
they
have to
had
go to
very.
sleep, though. I have to go to sleep. I have to work
Sorry,
in the
but
morning. It's
let
10
me
to
just
12.
finish by saying.
No, you guys keep
Finish by
going.
saying they
I'm
had
just going to
very
back out, and I
good-
didn't want to leave rudely. So bye, guys. Keep going.
I know.
Bye, Shannon.
Sorry about that. Yeah.
But yeah, we appreciate you coming in, Jade. Because
Yeah.
yes, we will keep
But they-
going.
I know. But I was just going to say they had very good reasons for thinking that might be a human tooth. You know, and even today, if you look at forensic textbooks, and I've done that. I actually have a screenshot from a forensic textbook, modern forensic textbook, that tells students to be very careful because pig molars look like human molars.
Well, I remember one time I was, we were driving. I used to live in Colorado, and we were driving in the mountains. We came across some kind of joint, and I wasn't even sure what kind of joint it was. It was just bones, basically. And if it had been a human joint, it would have been a dead person. It would have indicated foul play, basically. So, of
Right.
course, I wrapped it up and took it to the police station because I was like, I don't know what
Right.
kind of joint this is. So I left it to the experts to figure out, like, hey, this is an elk joint, because I'm not a hunter. I don't know what's what. So yeah, there's definitely room for error, and there was way more
Yeah.
room for error back then than there is now.
Yes. And in that forensic textbook, another thing they tell the students is to be careful with the finger bones because bear fingers look like human fingers. And they explain to them how you tell the difference. But obviously you can imagine now if human finger bones, you know what I mean? You had a hand somewhere that that had been amputated, let's say, and you took the flesh off and you had the fingers, then you took the flesh off a bear paw that was shot because it was a nuisance or something, and you were to put the two together, and let's just roughly say they're the same size, it'd be fairly easy to tell them apart. Forensics, and you think about something that's been in the for a while. Somebody comes across some finger bones and they're like, oh my God, this must be a human. Look at those bones. And they're all weathered, and maybe some animal came by and gnawed on them. So they aren't going to be in a pristine shape. The forensic textbook says this is why you have to be careful. Don't assume until you're, really carefully examine stuff. But yeah. People thought that the giants existed is because they came across, like mammoth and mastodon bones. Because their legs are constructed just like ours. And there's a researcher called Adrienne Mayer. She's at Stanford now. She's written some great books about fossils. And one of the things she's pointed out is that the legend of the Cyclops probably came from, I'm not sure if it was a mammoth or mastodon, but it was a proboscidean, a elephant type creature.
Right.
That were dug up on the island of either Cyprus or Crete. Forget which one. Sorry. They both start with C and they're both islands, and my dyslexia tends to make me mix stuff up like that. And what happened is when you look at the bones, when you look at the leg bones, they look just like giant human leg bones. And then you look at the skull, and it has this great big hole in the middle. Eye, right? No, that's where the trunk went.
I was going to say that's where the trunk attaches.
But if these people on this island, see, there's this thing called island dwarfism, where animals get smaller and smaller on an island and they eventually die.
Yeah.
Well, here in California, we had dwarf mastodons on the Channel Islands. Periodically, find another fossil. So if you've got a smallish elephant, so if you've got a dwarf mammoth on, and you dig up the bones, and the bones look a lot like human bones, and you've never seen an elephant, it's really understandable how they could think that that's a human. And the eye sockets that are on the side, well, they probably thought that's where the ears were. But yeah. So when people talk about giant bones that have been dug up, well, they probably did dig up some giant bones. They just weren't human bones. They just kind of looked like humans. Oh, I don't know about the stoned ape hypothesis. Actually, I think I did once. I'll have to look it up. I don't remember. I know about the aquatic ape hypothesis, which is very interesting, but there's no evidence for it, unfortunately. And the aquatic ape hypothesis, for those of you who don't know, is that our ancestors wandered out because of so many predators on shore. Our ancestors spent a lot of time in shallow water. And it's because of being in shallow water all the time that we lost our fur, because it wasn't, advantageous to be, all that heavy fur in the water. It also explains why women's breasts moved from the side kind of to the front, and why we have long hair, because babies would hang onto the long hair while we're in the water. But that's kind of the aquatic ape thing. Really interesting, and it explains a lot of stuff. Unfortunately, there's no evidence for it. I remember when I first discovered it, I thought, how cool is this? And then I was like, no, doesn't work.
Well, Kevin left. I was hoping he would
Yeah.
ask you.
How long have you been doing this?
Me? This is my second one.
Yeah.
What did?
No, I mean tonight. How?
Oh, this is the hangout.
How many hours?
We've been on now for an hour and 15.
Oh, okay. That's
So not too bad, but not too long either. I looked up this article, Terence McKenna's Stoned Ape Theory of Human Evolution.
Yeah, I'm gonna.
North African jungles receded towards the end of the most recent ice age, giving way to grasslands. A branch of our tree-dwelling primate ancestors left the branches and took up life out in the open, following herds of ungulates, nibbling what they could along the way. I mean, it makes sense.
Yeah, it does, but it sounds to me a lot like the aquatic ape theory, because right here they say it has great appeal and intuitive strength, but is necessarily based on a great deal of supposition. And that's kind of like the aquatic ape theory. Interesting. And I don't think you should ever toss any theory or hypothesis, excuse me. It's really a hypothesis. I don't think you should completely discard any hypothesis that has some rationale to it. Sometimes you just need to sort of tuck them off in the corner and look at them every once in a while, just in case, because you may get new information that says, oh yeah, that's right. I mean, for a long time, scientists didn't accept endosymbiosis, but and then the more and more evidence came in, it was like, oh yeah, that's right. It's just the way science works. Yeah, I'll have to look at it more later, and kind of tired tonight. I was listening to G-Man's. I'm working on these chemistry videos, and so I was working while I was doing that, I was listening to G-Man's Hangout and then True Empiricism's Hangout, and they were going after me sometimes, but that was funny.
Oh, well, I've been kind of looking back at some of Fiona's older videos about those two, and it's a little bit enlightening, to say the least. I mean, if you take Fiona's sense of humor out of the equation, it's kind of scary, because I hate to say it, but it's hard to treat people well when you see them treating others that badly. You know what I'm saying?
It is, and it's a struggle for me sometimes too. And they were really treating John McDropout poorly, and Is it True's Hangout or Gmail? I can't remember which one. They blur together right now. Badly. And they wouldn't let him finish, and then they were talking all over him and then accusing him of talking over them, which is standard procedure for that group. But you can't. No, it was True's. I remember because I had to switch my accounts to write comments, and I'm blocked from True on my main comment by True on my main comment. And see, it's almost funny. I mean, it is funny, but it's also kind of painful that they've had these things explained to them again and 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 again, and it doesn't get through. When you keep asking people, well, what could make new changes? What could make new structures? And you start listing stuff. Gene duplication, polyploidism, which is really a specialized form of gene duplication. You've got ERVs, you've got hybridization. We've got, and there are other things as well. And their response to that is, well, show me something that creates a new structure or what. No, I just did. It's like banging your head against a wall.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of where you got to leave it. It's like, you can only explain it so many times. I mean, you hear about the visit to New York as an example. You hear about it from multiple sides. And you hear about the visit to the museum, and they went over to the fossils and stuff, and how it was all explained to them. Like, if you don't sit there and look at evidence in the museum in New York, and that's not enough to convince you, nothing will. Point blank.
It's like I said, the minute you approach certain subjects, they just shut the door. Yeah. And you hear them again saying the same thing over and over, like, where are Lucy's toes? Oh, they make her, stand and look like a human. Well, where are her toes? Well, her, toe bones are little tiny things, and it gets scattered around. So we don't always find like toe and finger bones, little bones, with a skeleton. But we don't have Lucy's toes. We do have the toes of a lot of other, yes.
Yeah, we have other Australopithecus toes.
Yeah, we have lots of them. So that's how we know what the toes look like. G-Man brings that up, and he's been told that. But he doesn't. What was the thing he said tonight? I actually put it in a post. He said, let me go look at my... some really, really hilarious things in True Empiricism's Hangout. Absolutely funny. Okay. Let me find the one. I'm looking through my stuff here that I posted. Actually, I should have gone straight to my...
Was it public or was it
at one point, according to G-Man, to prove that evolution is true, at some point that dog must evolve into a human.
See, this, I mean,
and I don't even think he knows what he's saying when he says stuff like that. Don't think he gets it.
Well, this is something I've noticed that's common amongst, and it scares me because it's common amongst religion, and I hate to, it's not religion as a whole, but it's certain dogmas. It's almost conspiratorial in nature because it comes out in regular conspiracy theories too, like flat Earth.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and NASA lied. No, we didn't land on the moon. Chemtrails exist, and they're there to either sterilize you or to make the population complacent, and all that kind of crap. Yeah. Oh, the Illuminati and everybody exists. Yeah.
Right. It's an us against them mentality, and it's like, what's the goal of these conspiracies? What is the purpose of these conspiracies? And there's never really an answer to that.
I think it's a couple of things. One of which is I think this is a backlash against science, just like what happened in the 19th century when young Earth creationism and the flat Earth originated. Because it's scary. It's a scary world when there's all these things happening and you don't understand them. And science is complicated. So I think this is a backlash. What we're looking at is modern Luddites. Except these are against, rather than being against technology, they're against science. Although they won't admit they're against science. But yeah, there's also a form of persecution complex in certain branches of Christianity, this fundamentalist evangelical type of Christianity, and all fundamentalists evangelicals. The best phrase I can use is, but all of them are not like this, but there are a lot who are. Climate change because God will take care of everything, and who cares because the world's ending anyway. It's a scary kind of thing. And it also ties in with Christian dominionism.
Zoom 153 says something about Veckel denying G-Man said that in the hangout later. I'm not sure what they're talking about.
He did. Okay. G-Man did say it, and Veckel did try to deny it. No, G-Man said it. But see, the thing is, I don't think when he says stuff, I don't think he understands what he's saying. You know what I'm saying? He's not thinking as he's speaking. It's kind of like Donald Trump and his tweets. He doesn't think either.
I don't think he does.
G-Man So G-Man just spouts stuff and he doesn't realize what he's saying. But he did say that. Yeah,
I've heard G-Man say it. When does a dog ever come from a non-dog? And it's
he doesn't get simple things that he's had explained to him over and over again. I've told him and tried to explain to him, and I even have a video on it, that a dog will never become a non-dog, but a dog came from a non-dog.
Right. And now that it's a dog, anything that comes from it will always be a dog.
Just like dogs came from wolves, so they're wolves. Wolves came from myocyds, so they're myocyds, and dogs are myocyds because dogs are wolves. And that's basically what my little video did. It went all the way back. And he gets the two confused. And he'll say, well, show me a dog came from a non-dog. And someone will go, well, it did. And he goes, but that's not what you said last time. Confused between a dog comes from a non-dog, but a dog will never become a non-dog. He gets confused with those two things. Just like he still can't get straight why we are both fish and not fish.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And first of all, fish is not a scientific classification. It's a common usage word. But we'll go with it. So if we're speaking cladistically, and speaking cladistically means you are always your ancestry. Just like a dog is a wolf, which is a myocid, and going on back. Okay. So fish, bony fish, became amphibians, right?
Yeah. So
amphibians are still fish because cladistically they are always their ancestor. So this is just like a dog coming from a non-dog, but not becoming, but will never be a non-dog. Yeah, okay, anyway. So amphibians came from fish, but amphibians will always be amphibians. So anything comes out of amphibian will be an amphibian, right?
Yeah.
So amphibians then evolved into reptiles, which means reptiles are amphibians. But reptiles are also fish because amphibians came from fish, right?
Yeah.
Plus then, using the common usage of the word reptile, because that term is changing, reptiles became mammals. Reptiles, right? Yeah. But reptiles are amphibians, so mammals are amphibians. And amphibians are fish, so mammals are still fish. We are mammals. So in this sense, in this cladistic sense, when you're looking at our entire ancestry, we are still fish.
We're still
Now, of
eukaryotes. We're
course,
still deuterostomes. We're still all that stuff.
yes, stuff. And I have a little video I did about that too, which goes back to eukaryote and goes forward. And I had to leave out a few things because I fit it to a certain piece of music, but there's a whole bunch of stuff in there, going from step by step by step. We're craniotes, we're vertebrates, we're tetrapods, we're so on and so forth.
Chordates, whatever.
Right,
Yeah.
chordates. Yeah, there's all these things in there. But because mammals came from reptiles, mammals are still reptiles. Because reptiles came from amphibians, mammals are amphibians because mammals are reptiles and reptiles are amphibians. Amphibians came from fish. So amphibians are still fish, and reptiles are still fish because reptiles are amphibians. And we are still fish because we are mammals. Mammals are reptiles. Reptiles are amphibians, and amphibians are still fish. So that's speaking strictly cladistically. Now, obviously, it doesn't make much sense to refer to us as fish all the time. So what we do is we make certain divisions at certain times. So there are the bony fish that are over here. The modern day. So if we look at creatures in the modern day, we don't always speak of them as being their entire cladistic ancestry. In this sense, we are not fish, because fish are, well, they're the cartilaginous fish, which is sharks and rays. So that's what we consider fish today. Bony fish and cartilaginous rays and their immediate ancestors. Line. Same with amphibians. Same with reptiles, although, as I said, that's undergoing revision. And the same with mammals. We consider ourselves fish in that sense. We have this mammal ancestry. We're drawing a line at when mammals started to exist. So we don't call ourselves reptiles, because once we became mammals, it is more reasonable to just consider us mammals. So we are fish and not fish. We are fish if you want to trace us all the way back to our ancestor and speak cladistically, but we are not fish if you are looking at us in terms of the animals that exist and the classifications that exist today. Scales, we don't swim in the water. Well, of course, sharks don't have scales either, but we don't swim in the water and so on and so forth. So we're not what we modernly consider. We don't have those characteristics.
And
So we are both fish and not fish.
Why aren't we those fish? Because of speciation, because of evolution.
Right. And as I said, there are certain characteristics that we use to define fish.
Mm-hmm.
Characteristics, and that includes, they live in the water, and they have gills.
They have gills. They have.
There are certain characteristics we have that we use to define amphibians, and so on and so forth. There's certain characteristics we have to define mammals. In that sense, we don't fit that list of things that define fish, do we?
No.
So we're not fish.
Right.
Well, but our ancestry is fish. I realize that it's the kind of thing to explain to someone a few times before they get it, because it is sort of confusing when you say we're fish and not fish, and when you go, okay, so mammals are reptiles, reptiles are amphibians, amphibians are fish, so we're fish. Something most people will get if they've run it through their heads a few times. And right. the modern ideas, we have a modern definition of what this group over here is fish, and this group that's mammals. I'm leaving reptiles out because it's an undergoing revision. You should put a big sign, those under construction signs. They basically just need to put that on reptilia.
Yeah, they
under
do.
Construction.
Under construction. This attraction is not available.
Right. Exactly. But there is a term, I can't think of it. A lot of people are using that now when they talk reptiles, but basically it means in the colloquial sense, in the common sense. I guess common better. You know what I mean?
Right.
So you've got snakes and lizards and alligator, crocodilians and tuatara and
then there's turtles.
It's like you. So in the common sense, those are all reptiles. But we now know that turtles are a lot more different, and crocodilians are closer to birds. So it's confusing.
Right.
And there's a big under construction sign there. But we still have a common understanding of what reptiles are.
Right.
And so that's, I guess, the way. I can't think of the correct term that's used, so I think I'll just have to say common understanding. But yeah, there's a big.
Well,
under
I'm going to have to
construction sign
draw
there.
this to a close. It's an hour and 30 minutes, and
Yeah.
I got to work in the morning. So
Ah,
I was here to moderate. Fortunately, unlike the last one where G-Man joined, this one went relatively smooth.
yeah.
I appreciate you joining, Jade and Midnight, and
Right.
Kevin, and yada, yada, yada. And of course, Shannon for her wonderful job with talking to Neffy. And who else
Even
was
though
in
Midnight.
here?
Mike, Midnight. Or can't
Yes.
talk. Maybe a family or something. I know sometimes it's
Anyway,
yeah.
do you want the
Yeah,
last
Midnight,
word,
I will
Dave?
look into this whole. I was just gonna say Midnight, I'll look into the whole McKenna thingy.
Yeah.
Okay. So there are situations where the environment can affect our genes. We know that. It's called oh crap. Epigenetics. So yeah. Anyways, that's about it. I just minutes and nice to talk to you guys. So
Yep. Always a pleasure with you.
thanks.
And everybody have a wonderful evening. We shall see you probably again next week when I run another hangout with what did Steve say here? He said he was gonna get oh, what the heck? The flat earther's name. Rand, yes. He's gonna talk Rand, the flat earth. And everybody have a good evening.
Right.